I know that most of you probably know his daughter, Maddie, who is a senior here. And you can ask him a million great questions about what it's like to be an employee, what it's like to be an entrepreneur and to start your own thing. Questions about like how do you blend family and work. All of these are just really, really great. There's a wealth of knowledge in a wide variety of fields. And how many businesses have you started?
Well, 3.
Okay, so lots of experience, lots of diverse experience. Definitely tap into this knowledge, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me back. I did speak last year. How many of you were honestly there last time? Just 2? Okay, good. Well, you guys gotta keep quiet. Last time I think I took the full hour and a half, so this time for the 2 that have seen me before, I won't go as long today. Maybe we can ask some more questions and so on. But again, my name's Rob Oyler. I'm from Lawrence, Kansas originally. We live just over here, about 45 seconds away. I joked with Maddie that we'd just get her a moped and that would be fine, but that didn't work out. She got a car out of us. So anyway, what I wanted to do today is tell you about the businesses I've started, what they're about, kind of tell you about my history, how I started out. Wasn't a great story to begin with, but I figured it out, and how I got here today, and then tell you a little bit about the lessons that I learned over time, and give you guys an opportunity to ask some questions or give me some feedback, and then at the end I'll give you guys a riddle, which I'm sure these guys will love. You can't say anything about, but anyway, 3 businesses I've started. First one was Morgeson Properties. Morgeson Properties is just it's basically homes across 3 states. We've got 16 now that we lease out mainly to Hispanics in like downtown areas. So here in KCK, we've got some in Phoenix, we've got one in Missouri. Basically what we do is we buy the house, we fix it up a bit, let them pick the color of the paint, the carpet, the linoleum, the tile, stuff like that. So it's kind of their house. And then we lease it to them over 10, 15, 20 years. So it's like a rental situation, but with me traveling as much, I can't be dealing with someone at 2 in the morning that flushes a diaper down the toilet and I've got to fix it. So with these lease-to-owns, this allows me not to have to worry about any maintenance, any headaches like that. So I kind of act like the bank for them, give them kind of the terms that fit within their budget, and then it's a win-win. We're fixing up a house in an area that's not so good. They get a house that they normally wouldn't have received financing on from the bank, and then we get the cash flow over time. Originally, we got into this just, you got to start somewhere, but the very first property, honestly, for Maddie, because we wanted Maddie to go to Sacred Heart, it helped with the cash flow at the time, because I was starting, on the front end of my career at that point. So that's Morgeson Properties, and that's more of a side business today. Basically, it gets the kids through school, helps them with college, and then I've got 2 teenage daughters that are going to get married someday, so that's where a good chunk of that's going to go, I'm sure. WANRAC and Lightspeed, they interact with one another in the sense that WANRAC, that is a fiber optics company that we build networks nationwide. We look in 23 states. We're in 9 states today. I won't bother you with what states they are, but we sell one product to one customer. And that product is we build fiber optic wide area networks. And a wide area network is connecting schools within a school district. So think of Shawnee Mission School District. It's tough here because this is the only campus. But imagine the entire archdiocese. Okay, every school within the archdiocese, if they had one network and we had to connect them together, I would build that fiber network across town for them. And so that's what we do at WANRAC. And the only customer is K through 12 schools that we initially target for that. But because you're building to a school district and that school district is serving every area of town, you're passing a lot of businesses along the way. So when we install the fiber, the cost of doing that, the labor, the guys digging the ditches or hanging the poles, it's kind of like painting your house. When you paint your house, 80–85% of the cost of painting your house is in the labor. The actual paint is only about 15% of the cost. So why not go to Sherwin-Williams and buy the best paint, right? I mean, it would be silly to buy cheap paint when you paint your house because of the cost. So same thing. What we do here is we put in as much fiber as we can on the front end. So if the school district needs, let's say, 24 fibers to connect 12 sites together, we put in like 144. So we have lots of excess capacity. And that fiber that we don't use is called dark fiber. And it just means we're not shooting a laser down it to light it up. It's just sitting there dark, waiting for a future customer to come along. So that's kind of money in the bank for later on. But every deal that we do at Weigh and Rack on the front end has to stand on its own. So it's got to make the returns that we're looking for. It's got to be loaded with all the attorney's fees, the regulatory, the permitting, the engineering, the construction, the maintenance on the back end, any future moves that we don't even know about. So there's a lot of equations and calculus that go into that. And I never thought I'd use calculus, right? But Weigh and Rack today in those 9 states, the ancillary business that we've received has been from the cities, the counties. We've had a couple of hospitals, and then the biggest thing is wireless towers. Verizon, Verizon, Sprint, T-Mobile. Everyone thinks that wireless is where it's at. 95% of those networks are just fiber-based. It's that tower on the end that gets out to your phones, but that whole network is fiber. So that's what Weigh and Rack does. Lightspeed, I created Lightspeed more for a tax situation and taking advantage of some tax loopholes, to be quite honest. Lightspeed is a contractor to Weigh and Rack, and what Lightspeed does is project manage all of these projects when we win one. So when we win it and we've got to start engineering, we do permitting, we do the construction, we oversee all of those folks, and then once we send it to billing to Weigh and Rack, it then goes up to Weigh and Rack, and then Lightspeed is done with that project and goes on to the next one. And we'll talk more about the tax advantages later. But with Trump being elected and his background and just really how entrepreneurship works and so on, that will be a timely discussion. So that's the 3 businesses. Weigh and Rack's been in business. This is the 4th year, and I'll go into that a little bit on my background. But any questions on that so far? Feel free to ask at any time. Just jump in. I mentioned I'm from Lawrence. I was born and raised there. Gosh, not a lot of things I can brag about. Really, the only claim to fame I have in the family is my grandfather actually played for Fog Allen in 1930 to 1933. His name is on the all-time Letterman hallway in Allen Fieldhouse. If you go there, that's kind of cool. But I've never done anything super cool myself, but other than speak to high school kids, right? But I was born in Lawrence, Kansas. I'm 47, so I was born in '69. I was a whoopsie baby. My mom was 17, my dad was 18. They got married because they got pregnant with me. Divorced when I was about 2.5, and then my mom remarried, and long story there. But basically, my grandparents raised me. My mom was working 2-3 jobs, and so I had a really good and strong relationship with my mom's parents. My dad's father is the one at KU that I mentioned. But my mom's parents, they were middle class, didn't have a lot of money. My dad's dad was an attorney, so it was kind of the polar opposites. I'd go to visit my dad's parents, and it was all business, and they had nicer things, and my mom's parents were basically just full of love. So they were rich in love and taught me a lot of things. My grandma always, kind of instilled in me, hey, we've got this, but if you put your mind to it, you can make more of yourself. Just you can have anything you want as long as you set your mind to it. Your grandma says that, you're like, yeah, grandma, thanks. But she said it so many times over the years that it's just baked into me now. And when the times get tougher, there's some permit you can't pull, and you're like, oh my God, what am I doing? And grandma kind of pops up in the back of my head. So let's see. I went to Lawrence High, graduated from Lawrence High in '88. I went to KU for a semester right out of high school. All of my buddies, they just wanted to party, and apparently you're not supposed to do that while you're concentrating on college and school. So I was also in the Army. I joined the Army at 17, my junior year of high school. I needed my mom's permission, and my mom and my dad actually had both signed. So the summer after my junior year, I went to basic training, and then after my senior year, I went to South Carolina and I did my it's called your MOS, or whatever job you're going to do in the Army. So it was split training. I was in Army Reserves. I wasn't full-time, so again, nothing great. But that taught me a lot. It really got me to grow up and be responsible. those times, especially basic training. You learn that very quickly. So around the time that I'm graduating, going to KU, I've also got this commitment to the Army. I've got a great job. My first job is with Macaw Communications, which is basically it's a cellular company that turned into Verizon. Actually, AT&T bought them, and then AT&T had to spin off some assets, and it became Verizon. But that was my very first job. And how many folks here like music? Everybody like music? Anybody have a really cool car stereo? Anybody? Factory? Or is it, did you? Okay. I loved car stereos. Where I grew up in Lawrence, I think I was 14 or 15 at the time. How many people know Lawrence pretty good? You guys been there? On Iowa Street, Keefe's, is it, about 25th, 26th in Iowa, on the, what is that, on the west side. They're out of business now. The guy retired and auctioned everything off. But at the end of Keefe's was a place called Sounds Great Car Stereo. And that was right up the street from my house at the time. Well, it was across this park. But I'd go up there all the time, just goofing off, and I found this place, and I started hanging out there. The first day I was there, Nakamichi had this huge van, and Alpine had this Lamborghini sitting there. So as a 14, 15-year-old kid, I'm just blown away. So I just kept coming up and hanging out, and I loved car stereos. Well, I didn't even have a car. So as soon as I got my first car, I put in what I thought was a pretty kicking car stereo. So what happened next was, as I would make more money, I'd improve it and so on. And the guys that were up there, they were entering all these contests. These, you think it's just who's got the loudest stereo, and I thought the same. But over the years, they've really refined this event, or they did at least back then, and it still is like that today. But it morphed into more of a professional, contest. So it didn't only have to be loud, but it had to be cool, the installation, everything that you did. And so eventually I started competing, and I was winning some local contests, went and won some regional, and went to nationals twice in Tempe, Arizona, and later on we ended up moving there, and that was a result of my experience there. But did real well. I eventually got sponsored by Nakamichi. They had a cool crossover at the time. So I tell you this because, for one, that's why I'm standing here today, was that experience going up to that car stereo shop. I never thought in a million years, I was like, I'm just this punk kid hanging out, and today, literally, I am here speaking to you today because of that experience. Because what happened after that was car phones came along. I think about, what was that? That would have been, they were around, but I'd say that was about 88, 87, 88 at the time. And Southwestern Bell Southwestern Bell came to town, and there was this, it was called Rushoff's, and it was a locksmith. They also had this division of their business that they installed central vacuum systems. I'm sure some of you have that at your house. And alarm systems. So new construction, you would go in and you'd put that in when they were framing it, and I helped in the summer times doing that. And they became an agent for Southwestern Bell for these cell phones, and they needed somebody that knew their way around cars to install these things. So they knew my experience with car stereos, so I became the installer at Rushoff's for Southwestern Bell. Well, about 8 months later, what became Verizon came to town. It was Macaw at the time, and they recruited me over, and I started installing phones over there at 15th and Castle. Did that for a number of years, and I was over the shop in Topeka and Lawrence. But a funny thing happened is all the sales guys would come back to the back shop if you walk in with your brand new Mercedes and you want to see the punk kid in the back that's going to tear up your car, right? So I'd come out, they'd see me, and apparently I impressed them enough to where they were comfortable with me working on their car. But it was me at the end of the day, I realized, that was closing the deal for the sales guys. So I was like, you put two and two together, they're driving the nice cars, I'm just this punk kid trying to make it, got a nice stereo, but I'd like to be driving what they are, so I got into sales. I did inside sales at first, did outside sales, and then after I met my wife and graduated, I ended up going to Baker, by the way, I skipped that part. But I did Baker in 4 years, so I was a little adrift a bit, but I knew what I wanted, and I knew I had to have that degree. So when I refocused, went to Baker, I didn't start until 22, and I graduated when I was 26. So just know that, there's times in your life that you might take a wrong turn or two, but there is hope to correct it. So after graduating Baker, we moved to Phoenix, and actually Maddie was born in Phoenix. She was born in Chandler, Arizona, and she lived there for the first almost year of her life. But down there, I did outside sales. I got these large accounts. I was going crazy with it. And it became a point, though, where I had these huge accounts to where once I won the deal, I became an order taker. Because once you win this corporation, like I won the U.S. Postal Service account down there, and they had thousands of employees. Well, I'd go every Thursday morning at 5 a.m. for this safety briefing for all of the workers that would have to come to this. So I would be there, and it was the strangest thing because management was corporate, and most of the workers were union that drove the trucks, and then all the folks within the facility were non-union. So you had these three dynamics, and nobody liked each other. And I'm here at 5 in the morning on a Thursday, and I'd already sold the deal to corporate, and everybody was suspect of what I was trying to sell them. But anyway, I did a great job of that and was winning these trips to Hawaii, to Canada, wherever. But every day I'd wake up and there'd be 10, 15 orders in my inbox, and I'd go to the warehouse, get the phones, have them programmed, and go out, and I was basically a glorified delivery boy. So I was like, look, I got to do something else. I've made it here. And about that time, the internet was coming around. It had been around, but it was getting, we talk about the internet as kind of a hockey stick. The head of the hockey stick was this time that I'm talking about, and as we've turned the curve now, we're getting ready to take off in the stick. We can talk more about that later, but at the time, everything was new, and I'm like, gosh, I can try this. I know everything there is to know about, wireless. How hard can this be, right? So I went to work for AT&T down in Phoenix, and my first day on the job, I came back from lunch, and I almost quit. I was like, this is like Chinese. I thought I had this, whipped. Came back, and I talked to one guy, and later on, I'll tell you, I'll just tell you right now, one of the lessons in life, you got to find a good mentor. And a lot of times you don't realize who those mentors are originally. You kind of figure it out later. But have lots of mentors as much as possible. And you'll go through a lot, and some you'll like, some you won't like, but you'll learn something from all of them, either good or bad. So down there, started with AT&T, selling these circuits, got up to speed on that, and then quickly I realized, hey, all these wireless companies I mentioned earlier have all of this fiber. I'm in this business now, so I started selling to Verizon, T-Mobile, Sprint, and did real well. Worked for a company called KMC Telecom. I'm pointing this way because we moved back with Maddie, and we were broke at the time. I was doing great, but our goal was for my wife to be able to stay at home and raise Maddie, and obviously we wanted to have more kids. So having that goal was great, and what you really want, and you set that up to where you can chase down that runway. But at the time, the setback is, it takes a hit on what you're making. So we moved back home to Kansas just to be closer to family. We wanted them to have as good a relationship as we had with our grandparents. So upon moving back, I started working with KMC Telecom, and they had 35 markets across the nation. It was kind of the same setup as WANRAC. There's a fiber network through town, but they were mainly selling to businesses. So I won a large deal that I sold to Sprint here in town in Chicago, and that was huge for me personally and for the business at the time. And then that business ended up selling, and I sold the Sprint section in Chicago that these acquirers for the other company weren't interested in. I sold those to a company called Unite Private Networks that was based up in Kearney, Missouri. And Kearney guys said, look, we call it the head shed up there. It's about an hour-and-a-half trip. But they said, look, we love this deal. We want to do more fiber to the tower stuff. And by the way, we do this school stuff. And I'm like, well, that's pretty cool. So I came on. The joke is I was a pregnancy late to the game because these 4 individuals started the company called Unite Private Networks, again, UPN for short. And, had I shown up 9 months previous, I could have been an equal partner, but I wasn't. I did pretty well. They took care of me. But we sold that business in 2009, was December of 2010. I think it transacted in January 2011. Those guys made out like bandits. So the school side of that was very attractive, and the buyers came in and they gave me a 2-year contract to stay on, and I ended up staying on for a year. And then I realized, hey, I saw the writing on the wall that once you build fiber to somebody, you'd be crazy to lose that deal. So if they sign a 3-year, 5-year, 10-year contract with you, once that comes up for renewal, if you don't renew them and you allow somebody else to come in and take that, you're crazy. You're just not paying attention, because no one should ever be able to steal that business from you, because once you've paid the capital on the front end to build it, upon renewal, that's paid off, and it's just pure profit. So I knew that there's so many, well, I can tell you, there's 16,000 school districts, 332, I think, in the nation. And once they get fiber, that's game over. So it's literally a land grab right now. So we're trying to sell and build as many networks across the nation as possible in the next 3 to 5 years. And the plan is to sell to somebody else, like a AT&T, CenturyLink, or Unite. So that's the goal. So that brings us up to today. And again, the 4th year at WANRAC. Any questions on that part so far? Okay.
Will it cease to exist then after the land grab's over?
WANRAC itself? Well, that's a great question, because we've even played around with, there's several competitors in our space of being the acquirer and kind of being the consolidator ourselves. So we've had some discussions on doing that. So yeah, that would be cool. Maybe I'm not giving myself enough credit, but that is certainly an option. And we've got a lot of folks sniffing around, and have for the last couple of years. Mainly they just want to know who you are and what you're about, what you're chasing, private equity guys and so on. And I had some relationships from the last buyout as well. But that was a real cool process. I think I got my MBA in finance just sitting, and I don't have my MBA, by the way. I said that with quotes. But when we went through the buyout with Unite, we started with 31 private equity firms, and we narrowed it down to 13, and then we narrowed it down further to 5, and then 3 bid. That took a long time. And these guys were bringing in their debt holders that were going to finance the deal if they won it. And some of these guys are Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs was there on 3 occasions, and they have a whole team of people that come in, and there was a couple of times I was thrown up in the trash can before the presentation. So at the end of that, these guys were just asking questions that I knew the answer to. I knew them better than anybody in the room, and I gained a huge amount of confidence just having that experience. So now there's, not anyone I can talk to on the finance side that I don't feel comfortable with, as long as you know your information. So, but that's a great question. I mentioned my grandma. She was a huge influence on me. I mentioned failure a time or two. These are just lessons along the way. Really, the best lessons you learn and grow from are the failures. And even if you've got an employee working for you that fails, if you've got a guy that made $1 million mistake, what's your first reaction? He's out of there, right? Well, he just made $1 million mistake and learned $1 million lesson, right? You think he's going to do that again? So if you have the patience within you to transcend that immediate failure and see what that means to you, and how that can benefit you, that can be huge. It can also build a lot of loyalty in your employees or folks that you're working with as well. And another one is find your motivation. I'm just jotted down a few of these that I've thought of over time. My motivation, back in the back of these cars in this shop installing these car phones, there was a guy that I was working on his car, and in fact I freaked out because I popped his trunk because I needed to get back there, and there were these bags. I bet there were 20 bags stuffed full of quarters. And I bet there's probably $10,000 in quarters in the back of his car. And he just turns over the keys to his car and doesn't even, fails to mention all this money's in the back. So I went back out there, and before I did that, I noticed these tapes were in there. It was these motivational tapes. And I've got kind of a double take on that. On one hand, I think they're kind of cheesy and I'm suspect of them. But on the other hand, this one, it was Mike Wickett. I'll never forget. But so when I went out and reminded him of the money that I'm about to touch, and are you okay with that? Or do you want to come and inventory this like he's going to count it all, right? Maybe he knew. I don't remember what his answer to that was, but he goes, yeah, go ahead, because I asked him about the tapes. You mind if I listen to the tapes? He goes, absolutely. In fact, I'm done with them, and if you like them, go ahead and keep them. So I listened to these motivational tapes, and that was huge. It got me to make it's kind of like a bucket list. You know, I've got a bucket list now, but at the time it was things you wanted to do in life for your career, and just go crazy with that. I don't know if you guys have that today, if you've got like an idea board or whatever that is, but my biggest thing is you got to visualize what you want. You know, if it's, hey, I want to start a business sometime, well, get your checkbook out and make some fake checks. You know, just get used to writing a big check. You know, that sounds cheesy now, but just doing things that put you in that actual situation. You know, in sports, a lot of you are in sports, I know you are, and a lot of times they say you got to visualize the play. For one, it helps you memorize it, but if you visualize yourself in that situation, it becomes reality. It really does. So the mental aspect of making it or your goals is definitely huge, and I know this is stuff you guys haven't heard, or have heard before. But definitely find what your motivation is, you know, what your life goals are, what you want out of life, you know, who you want to marry. Your mate is a huge, huge one. My wife's not here today. She was last time, but that was huge. You know, her biggest struggle when she stopped working, because she had a degree, she had a great career. Her biggest struggle was I was the one making the money and bringing home the paycheck. And she lost that self-worth. And, you know, she was staying in her pajamas or sweats all day. And so she took an ego hit big time. And I was always, you know, building her up on that. And today, I look back, I would not be here talking to you today and have the success I did without her doing what she did, because she took all the obstacles out of my way so I could focus on the business side of things. And she's heavily involved in Land Rack and Lightspeed, Borgeson Properties as well. She does a lot of the back office stuff. So she's involved, but you know, finding a mate is huge. That's your life partner. So make sure you choose wisely. That would be big advice. And listen to mom and dad, what they think about it, right? They're going to tell you. Definitely get your degree. One of the, I'm going through this with Maddie right now. She's looking, she'd probably kill me if I told you, but we've narrowed it down to Arkansas and KU. She's going to do a business degree. And, you know, the biggest thing to watch out for in college is college, you know, even the state colleges like the two I mentioned, they still need to make money because they've got a lot of maintenance on buildings, and you know, they're not for profit per se, but they look for a profit and they just go about it differently. And they're not there by the time you get to college. You know, you've learned all of your lessons through high school, how to be independent, how to ask for help and so on, but they're not the ones pushing you to get through college. They don't care if you stick around 6, 8, 10 years. It's just more money out of your pocket, right? So the big thing at college, when you go to college, make sure you know what you want to do. Make sure you know what your major is. Otherwise, you're going to cost mom and dad or yourself a lot of money, because they'll just tell you, well, hey, you can change your major to junior year. Well, what's that going to do to you? You're still not going to finish in 4 years. So make sure you have a good conversation with yourself about what you want to do in college, because that's going to be something that could set you back if you got a lot of student loans, or set mom and dad back, or whatnot. So keep that in mind. And then love what you do. If you can't get up in the morning and be excited to get out of bed, then you're in the wrong business. I don't work a day in my life at all. All of these 3 companies, I love it. I mean, I don't ever see myself retiring. In fact, if I get bought out here, I'm just going to do more of this. And I do this all day long. I wouldn't say it's easy, it's difficult, but I know it well enough now to where I could do this asleep. Okay? So love what you do. And again, you know, you might not love it right away, but you're going to know deep down that little voice inside you is going to say, hey, you know, kind of stinks right now, because right when you get out of college, you're not going to be where I'm at, or in the top floor. You're going to be in the basement, either doing the mail or doing all the back office stuff to learn the ropes. So, you know, keep that in mind. If you hate that, but you know the goal is to get here, and that's going to be fun, then stick with it. Don't say, well, Mr. Oyler said just to quit. Okay? So love what you do. Build your network is another one. With that, that's mentors as well, but Build your network of folks that you're going to school with, that you're taking your business classes, whatever you're doing. I would suspect with the classes here, you guys are probably interested in entrepreneurship, business, or something like that. So just keep in mind that, your whole life you're going to remember who you went to school with, and then especially in college, in fact, most of my friends I relate to today are from college. And then LinkedIn is huge. I don't know if you're on LinkedIn today. That is kind of the Facebook of business, if you will. And that's where you meet a lot of folks, get introductions. I've got over 1,000 contacts in LinkedIn. I think it's like 1,200 now. And if 9 times out of 10, if there's somebody I want to talk to at some business, if they're not in my contact list, which most of the time they're not, someone within there is friends with them, and I get a 3-way introduction every time. So that's huge. So networks are huge, as you know. Family motto. Who has a family motto? Anybody? Ours, I embarrassed Maddie last year. Our family motto is work hard, play hard, but do the job right. Okay? And the harder you work, the harder you get to play. And I tell the kids this all the time. I'm like, guys, I know this stinks right now, but we get through this, we're going to play just as hard. And I always tell them too, if you're going to work hard in the things I asked you to do, don't take the shortcut. Do it right. My dad, my stepdad that raised me, and my grandfather, they always said that. They're like, they'd make me start over several times on things. So for what that's worth, have your own motto or family motto once you get to that point. I talked about finding a mentor. Here's another one you're probably not expecting. Work for a crappy or mean boss. Okay? So I had this one guy that I worked for at KMC Telecom. I'll give you one example. I think I might have used this example last time, probably because it's seared into my memory. It was so horrible. But we were in Atlanta for some quarterly meetings, and I've got my presentation, and my boss, he and I are pretty tight. I'm thinking, I'm like his pet salesperson, right? So we're down in Atlanta. We get there about 7 or 8. We have a late dinner. We're down in the bar having a couple of drinks, shooting the bull. And then my boss comes in about 10:30. And about 11:15, we start talking about my presentation tomorrow. He goes, so you ready for your presentation? I'm like, yeah. And he goes, well, tell me about it. So I start rattling off a couple of points, and he's like, you're gonna talk about that? And I said, yeah, I was planning on it, and here's why, and da-da-da. He goes, do you have your presentation with you? I'm like, well, it's up in my room. He's like, well, go get it. So I go up to get it, come back down. He's flipping through it. He's like, oh, what about this? What about this? So the presentation the next day was going to be to his boss. So obviously he wanted to look good. So he, in having the relationship we did, actually held me to a higher standard because he didn't want me to look bad in front of his boss as well. So here I am. Now it's about 12:30. He's like, you need to change this. And I've got like 13 copies. They're all spiral bound, that you get at Kinko's. So how do you do this, right? So I'm like, well, what am I going to do? He goes, well, there's a Kinko's right down the road. And and they're open 24/7. So about 2 to 4:30 in the morning, I'm in Kinko's fixing this proposal. And just hating life, hating him, just like, this is BS. I'm not ever doing this again. And then the next day in the presentations, I'm all anxious about it because I've changed it enough to tailor to him. But I don't know the depth of knowledge that I had previously in my previous presentation, so I'm anxious. And the first guy that goes, the president and CEO of the company, was the one at the head of the table. And you pass out these presentations to everybody. First person gets up, he announces what he's talking about. He's on the first page of the table of contents. Well, the CEO's flipping through the presentation. He's about page 17, 18 in this guy's presentation. He goes, hey, what about this? And goes right to this question. And the guy couldn't answer it at first, like he wanted. So he goes, hey, everybody, will you pass those presentations down? So everybody passes their presentation down. The CEO gets up with the stack, walks over to the trash can, throws them away, and says, next. So can you imagine the stress that you'd be under doing that, right? Meanwhile, I've just been up all night. I haven't slept. My presentation's completely different. And at the end of the day, I did okay, right? But the lesson there is be prepared. Always be prepared. Always know your stuff inside and out. If you know it well enough, like when I go for WANRAC, I don't really prepare other than some of the details, and I've got a package of that actual deal that we're presenting. But the common questions that the board of directors, or I'm sorry, the school board, superintendent, CFO ask, those are questions I've heard for years. So I know that stuff well enough, but I didn't originally. So you've got to be prepared for everything. And the more you're prepared, if somebody gives you a project at work when you're first starting out especially, ask for more projects. That's how you're going to get to know not only the people, but have the opportunities to present in some higher level folks. If you're doing a presentation or a special project, who's interested in that? The higher ups. So that's going to give you exposure. It's going to get you to learn more about the business. But it's also going to make sure that you've got your ducks in a row. It's tough, but again, that's back to the working hard, right? And then so once you get through that presentation, just go out and make sure you play hard. Okay? So work for a crappy boss. Another thing I've got in here, I did debate in high school. How many folks have done debate in here? Okay. You guys should do debate. I know it doesn't sound cool to do. And I think mine was a scheduling situation where that was all that was available, and I did it. And that's huge. That gets you to act fast on your feet. It gets you to look at both sides of the situation because you've got to argue the pros and the cons. If you're going into business, you're going to have to speak. So public speaking in college, take those classes, take them here if you've got them. But debate is huge. At the time, I was like, oh man, debate, are you kidding me? Maddie fought me tooth and nail. Oh my goodness, that was like World War IV, trying to get her in debate. But she did it. She didn't continue it on, and hers was more of a scheduling either. But she, to this day, if you go up and ask her, she'll tell you, I wish I did more debate. But that time that she was in it, she loved it. Did very well. So have an open mind, okay, because of the debate situation from that perspective. Patience. Make sure you have lots of patience. Don't try to get rich quick. You're going to hear about your buddy down the street. Wow, he flipped this house and made tons of money. I can't tell you how many people that kind of were colleagues or friends of mine that I ended up meeting, down here in Morganson Properties when we first got into it. Oh, hey, gosh, man, you can take this, sell it, and with that 20 or 30,000, go buy 4 more, and there's nothing that's going to get you rich quick overnight that is going to be sustainable at all. It's just hard work, so keep that in mind. If your parents have told you if it's too good to be true, it probably is, and it is. Now there's some flashes in the pan, but for the most part, do it the right way, okay? So I'm sure all of you want to be successful in life, right? Right? To do that, you can't just say, hey, I want to be successful. Okay, you got to do some of the things we were talking about today and really decide what do you want to do. It really boils down, you can talk to this guy and he'll tell you, it boils down to 7 things. Or it boils down to 4.5. I've got 3 for you today. Just my different life experiences, I've thought, what at the end of the day has made me where I am today? And it's really the life lessons. It's the failures. It's the trying different things and different combinations. I couldn't get permits for the longest time for railroads. Railroads will take 6 months to get, okay? If I got a project that's got to get done in 4 months, and it's going to take 6 just to get the permit to cross the railroad, that's not going to work. Well, believe it or not, donuts and flowers go a long way in sitting in someone's office and saying, I'm not leaving here until you tell me what I need or what I'm missing for this permit. So little stuff like that, just little guerrilla selling and just getting creative. Think outside of the box. These guys, you got to put yourself in the shoes of who you're dealing with. If I'm dealing with Mr. Consiglio, okay, what are his hot buttons? What does he like and dislike? So if you came up and hit a bad hot button, you're probably not going to get your grade changed, right? But if you know what could massage that decision, I don't know, maybe he likes donuts, right? Bring him some donuts before you ask him. So my point is, when you're dealing with folks, think outside of the box and don't just deal with folks on their business level. If you ask them about their family and all that, that's great, but you're really just BSing them, and they can see through that pretty quick too. But be genuine, find out what makes them tick and set yourself apart. So my point was, it boils down to 3 things. And the first one is really, if you're saying to yourself, hey, I want to be successful, well, most of you are going to fail unless you really want to be successful. I mean, you got to have passion about it. I mean, like when you wake up in the morning, you got to breathe to keep living. You got to be wanting to be successful as much as you need air, okay? And that sounds like, oh, you know, he's just saying that, but I'm serious. You've got to want it so bad that you're going to overcome everybody else that wants it. So if you're after the same thing as somebody else, what's going to set you apart, okay? You know, I think last time I talked about Beyonce, and at the time I spoke last year, she just came out with her new album at the time. I forgot what that was called, Lemonade maybe? Anybody remember that? When she comes out with an album, for one, these days, they release the whole album at once. Back in my day, they would drip with the song, second song, and then they'd release the album. And then, based on what songs were popular, they would make a music video on that. That was back when MTV used to actually play music videos. So you'd get a music video, and then if this other song was popular, that second video would come out. And then after they soaked up and mopped up all the money from that, then they'd go out on tour, right? Well, Beyonce, that's not how she works. She has passion. She wants to be successful more than she needs air, okay? She comes out with a whole album, releases it all at once, usually at 2, 3 in the morning, and when she releases it, every single song on her album, she's already made a video to in secret. So imagine how many people it takes to make a music video, and as popular as you are as Beyonce. And now you've got 13 music videos, okay? And they all come out at once, and she's touring at once. Imagine what type of work ethic that takes. And she demands excellence from everybody she works with. Now, if you're not, you don't have to be Beyonce, but if you shoot for being Beyonce and you get up to here, are you still successful? So you see my point, okay? So have passion for what you do. And my note to myself is, you need to want it more than sleep, eat, or party. Most of you won't have success, or you don't want it more than you want to sleep. So if you sleep more than you love success, you're not going to be successful, okay? So just think about that. Especially in college. There's times you just won't even sleep. And that example I gave you about a crappy boss, okay? I was hating life that next day. But in the end, I'm telling you a great story today, right? So the second thing is sacrifice, and it kind of goes along with the passion. But again, my quote to myself here is to be able at any moment to sacrifice what you are today for what you could be. So what you see yourself as today, and you know you need to be here to be that successful person, are you ready to sacrifice where you are today for that, you know? And if that's, hey, I need this job, and that job's in Houston, are you willing to move to Houston to get the experience you need to eventually be back in Kansas City? So are you plotting out your goals like that, okay? And are you willing to sacrifice those things? Because if you're not, then you're not passionate about it. And then it goes back to square one. Well, maybe you shouldn't be doing that job, right? So think about these details. And again, some of you can't sacrifice other stuff for, you know, maybe you could get ahead here at school if you weren't watching Bachelor or Monday Night Football, right? So are you willing to sacrifice that to get an A in Mr. Consiglio or Mr. Webster's class? And if you really want to watch Bachelor, well then DVR it, right? So my point is, you know, the sacrifice is huge as well. And the third thing is pain, and pain is temporary, okay? I was telling you again, I was sucking air that night, and there's lots of other things that I've had. But the quote here is, it may last for a minute or an hour or a day or even a year, but eventually that pain will subside and something else will replace the pain, okay? So again, you want to be a finance major, you want to go work for a Goldman Sachs firm, you think you're going to be in the top floor doing that at first, it's going to be a lot of pain along the way, right? Just know, as long as you're doing what you need to do, that pain's going to go away and you're going to get promoted. But just try not to live in the moment and blow up your whole career or your plan because of a little pain, all right? And again, you know, I tell Maddie this all the time. You know, most of you here are spoiled. You know, she is. And some of you have never done anything hard or challenging for yourself. You know, you've done some tough things. But what I'm talking about is something real hard, you know. And then when things get tough, you call someone else, you complain about it, you say how you don't want to do it, you're looking for what's the word I'm looking for? Misery loves company, so you're looking for some company to your misery, right? So don't worry about the pain. You're not going to die. It's just painful, temporary. It might last a year, but you're going to get through it. And I'm proof of that. So for examples, what I wanted to do, any questions on any of that so far? When you own your own company, you can't really, I mean, folks right out of high school, I would encourage you, if you got a great idea, go for it. But you do need life experiences, and we've talked about that today. I wouldn't be where I am with Wainwright today if I didn't have those experiences at the companies I told you that I was at, especially at Unite, because I learned how, A, to get financing, B, how to sell certain complicated deals, how to get through regulatory. When you deal with the city, especially I built in the city of Chicago, there's no city on earth like the city of Chicago to build in. In fact, I'll tell you a quick story. I had to go through 13 municipalities one time. In fact, it was for the Sprint project. And one municipality, almost darn near in the middle of the whole project. It was, I can't even think of the name of the municipality right now. I think Buffalo Grove. And this lady would not let me talk to the guy that I needed to talk to for the permit. So they said, and I'm like, look, we have to have this. Can I just come by the office? Well, he won't see you without an appointment. I said, okay, well, when can I get an appointment? Well, he can book in the next week. She's got all my information down. She goes, oh, hey, by the way, are you a member of his PAC? And I goes, PAC? She goes, well, his political action committee. And I'm like, no. I said, we're from out of state. I told you we're based in Kansas City. Well, you know, I know I've said this, but he gives priority to folks that are a member of his PAC before he'll see anyone. I mean, he'll see you, but it may be, you know, I can't put you in here because that's a priority appointment. So I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So how do you become a member of his PAC? Well, that's $3,500. And then you need to come in and tell him what you're doing and so on. And I'm like, you're kidding me. So it's like a shakedown, right? So we pay the $3,500. We were able to retain that appointment. We go, about to show up a couple hours before. Well, hey, he needs to reschedule that. And I'm like, we're in town. He's like, I know. He actually wants to go to the White Sox game, and he's out looking for tickets right now. And we're like, you know, you could see the writing on the wall that we should be getting tickets to the White Sox game to take this guy. So we end up getting him into this suite, and we go and we talk to him, and we're shooting bull all night about stuff nothing to do with the project. And at the end of the night, in a 15-second conversation, he says, now tell me what you're doing. And we told him, he goes, okay, great. Well, hey, go see Susie the next day, and we'll get the permit released for you. So that's just an example of, if I just started this company, I would have been frustrated. I'd been, screw this. I have no idea how to deal with it. I would have thought it was illegal, right? So, which it seemed like it was, but, you know, they've got it set up, the system, right? But that's dealing with workers in Chicago. In fact, one time we were coming into the school, and they were having a convention going on, and it was in the district office. And during the convention, they had all of these outside people and all these teachers from 3-4 state area. And we were rolling this stuff in, and they said, what are you doing here? And we're like, well, we're taking this stuff back to the DMARC location. And they're like, you're supposed to drop that off at that back, the back dock, the loading dock. And I'm like, well, we're just carrying it in. Look, it's all here. This is everything we need. No. You got to have a union person bring that in. It's got to be delivered to the back dock, and then they will bring it in. And then we were hooking up some lights into a display that we had. It's just something you snap in, and they're like, you need a union electrician for that. So some of that stuff, you know, you're starting your own business, you're like, this is crazy. So really having the experience of working for a company is good. So what I would encourage you to do is, whatever your degree is, whatever idea you have, my advice would be get experience, real world experience working for a company that's in that line of work. And then find the gaps, find the inefficiencies. You know, right now, like I said, it's a land grab. So in this period of time, this snapshot of time, I couldn't start this company 8-10 years from now. I could start an iteration of it based on the success we've already had, but I couldn't start it from scratch 8 to 10 years from now, because the opportunity will be moved at that point. So get some good first off, get your degree, get some real world experience, get that crappy boss behind you, and then learn some things corporately, how they do business. When I was at Unite, I was taking notes on everything. Even if it wasn't in sales like I was doing, it was how to get this permit, how to project manage this, how to get a C-like license, how to get regulatory approval for here. Who are the attorneys doing this? Why do we have that attorney doing this versus this attorney? So just always take notes and look at the bigger picture, because if you want to do something on your own, that's how you're going to be able to do it and have the confidence. But let me tell you something here too, and this is where it gets important and attractive. If you want to be who wants to be a brain surgeon? Makes pretty good money, right? Anybody in here want to be a brain surgeon? What do you think that makes? Makes about $300,000 to $500,000 a year, okay? Based on where you're at. All right? If I'm a brain surgeon, let's just say I'm making $500,000 a year. What's my tax bracket? Anybody know? It's the highest. What is the highest right now? Mr. Webker, do you know?
I think 39.6. Yeah. Am I right or wrong?
So 39.6. Anybody got a calculator? Quick. I'll even let you round up to 40. What is it at 40?
What's about?
It's 200,000. So if we round up, so you take home $300,000 after taxes. How long did you go to school to be a brain surgeon? Okay. Once you got your degree, how long before they let you operate on brains? Independently operate on brains. So how long do you have invested where you're making $500,000? Okay, let's just call it 12 years. Okay, just for grins. All right. Over at Wainwright, I don't take first couple of years I didn't take much of a salary at all. And quite honestly, from the buyout of my previous company, or let's just put that aside because not everybody has that, from the money that you make at your normal job, you're putting stuff away so you can start your own business, or you start your own business while you're still in your corporate job and it takes off and then you join it full time, right? Well, nice little tax code we've got now at Wainwright. I pay a whopping 15%, okay? So if I, let's say, make 500,000, which I'm not right now, you can quickly see the difference, okay? But if I'm a brain surgeon making 500,000, the IRS is taxing me as an individual. If I'm making 500,000 as Wainwright, I'm at 15%, but guess what? My car, my cell phone, everything I do, any trip that I make, all the meals that I eat on business, that's all a write-off. None of that comes out, okay? The cars that we have today, I have one car under Wainwright because I do business legitimately under it, and I have another car under Morganson Properties, and I legitimately do business as that. My wife and I's cell phones are written off. Our insurance is written off, okay? This guy, 500,000, his family plan is probably $1,400 a month, okay? So that comes out of here before he's taxed 39.6%, all right? What's that a year? That's almost 30,000, right? Wainwright pays my insurance, okay? So what's another benefit of this that really puts it on steroids is all of these projects that I'm building. You know, these are multi-million-dollar projects. There's a thing called accelerated depreciation. So as much money as I can spend this year, instead of getting a normal 20% depreciation on it, I could get 50 and sometimes 75% depreciation on that. So guess what that does? If I'm making 500,000 a month, okay, times a year, what's that, 6 million? So if I make 6 million, I've got taxed at 15% on that, right? Well, I just spent $4 million building projects, and those don't bill until 2017. So how much did I make on those projects this year? Not a dime. So I just lost $4 million. Wipes out my 6, right? So I have negative income for the year. I pay no taxes. Okay? Now, I pay taxes, but I'm giving you an extreme example of that. Okay? Because in the beginning, I'm to the point now to where we're cash flow positive. But up until June of this year, we were not in a positive income situation from a tax perspective, okay? So now that we are going forward, most I'm going to pay is 15%. And then when I go to sell, say I sell for $20 million, okay? How long does the brain surgeon need to work to make $20 million? 4 years. Right? Right. And when he does make that 20 million, he's taxed here, right? I take 15% off of that. Okay, so $3 million bucks. I take home 17 in that situation. So, you want to go to 12 years of school to be a brain surgeon, and I'm not discouraging you from doing that. But that's the difference. And you'll learn all of this when you're taking business classes and finance and tax law and stuff. Nobody wants to take tax law or accounting. Your dad's an accountant. He can tell you all about this stuff. He does it worldwide, his dad. He's got to know the tax code in over 50 some countries. Imagine that. But if you're not going to be that, have that guy on your staff. Okay? So that's the difference, and that's where it gets really exciting, and that allows you to go play hard. Okay? So I want to leave you with one last thing. I did this a bit early last time, and people got distracted. I think you were even harassed a couple of times after class. But my point is, in sales, I'm a sales guy at heart, okay? And I told you earlier, know your stuff inside and out, okay? Even if you get into the borderline of a competitor is pounding away, well, hey, they don't have this, but we do. You ignore those guys. You need to know your stuff so well that you can get out of any situation, okay? So I'm very proud of the fact, I've not always been this way, but I can sell anything to anybody at any time, okay? I could sell ice cubes to Eskimos if I had to. I'd convince them that they needed them. So to prove that point, I need 3 volunteers. Let me get the 2 that have heard me before, and then 1 other volunteer. Come on up. You were here too, right? Come on up. And then I'll have you keep them honest, okay? Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give each of these guys $10. And this is just change. You keep the change. Tell me how much that is. Okay, these 3 guys have been on a business trip, and it's the end of the day, and they're going to get checked into a hotel, okay? They come into the hotel, and in fact, why don't you just be the hotel clerk?
Okay.
Okay, so they come in to check in for the day, and it's going to be $30, so tell them.
It's gonna be
So put that to the side so you don't confuse it. So pay the lady the $30 for the hotel room. Now, notice each of them is paying $10, okay? All right. So they go up to their room and they get all checked in for the night. And tell me your name.
Nicole.
Nicole. Are there any pennies, dimes, nickels, quarters in this transaction at all? They just gave you $30, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm your manager and I come up to you and you guys are in your room. So I say, hey, you know, what's going on today? And you say, well, these 3 guys just checked in and I noticed that you've still got the 30 on the counter. I'm like, well, don't you remember the special today? It's only $25. And you say, oh, darn, I forgot that, right? So Nicole is in trouble. She overcharged him. So I say, Nicole, here, how much was there? $5. So why don't you get up and go knock on their door and give them their change back and apologize for the error, okay? So she's going to, well, here, I'll just make it easy on you. So Nicole comes up, knocks on the door, and says, you answer the door, right?
Yeah.
Sir, I'm sorry, we overcharged you for a room. It's only $25. Here's your change back. Here's $5. And what do? You're still thankful that Nicole came all the way up. You give her a $2 tip, right? So Nicole, you keep your $2 tip. And then give your buddies the $1. So how much does everybody have?
$1.
Okay, so the question is, how much did they each pay for the room? Anybody? How much did they start with? $9? How many guys are up here? What's 9 times 3? 27?
Paid $27 for the room.
$2 tip?
Oh.
How much is that? 27 plus 2? Where's the $1? Come on, guys. Where's the $1? This is easy. Have I closed you all that fast?
Say that again. I still don't
So they walk in. Let's go over it. They walk in with $30. Here's the 30. And Nicole said there's no pennies, there's no dimes, there's no nickels, there's no quarters, right?
Yeah.
So there's the 30. Nicole gave him $5 and she got a $2 tip. Where's the $1? Well, they each have them. So you walked in with a 10, 2 5s, 2 5s, and 2 5s, right? You have no other money in your pocket, but what do you have now?
$1.
So how much did you spend today at this lovely hotel?
$9.
Where's the dollar?
It's the cold.
Nobody knows? That's how the tax guys get you. Do you believe that? So where's the dollar?
I don't know. Uncle
Do I
Sam has
have
it.
the dollar?
We started with 5, right? And where are they? Can you see all the $5?
Yeah.
There it is, black and white. Okay? If you think about it, you can give me the answer, but you guys aren't thinking because I'm a heck of a sales guy and I just sold you on the fact of this missing dollar that's not missing. Where's it at? Anybody know? Where? Okay. So think about that. All right? So that completes the presentation. Probably drive you crazy now. But any questions?
Where's the dollar?
What do you guys think the answer is?
This is $1.
You probably want to say, somebody probably wants to say, well, it was $8.33, right?
Yeah.
Does somebody want to say that? Where was that transaction? No. I mean, there was no pennies, dimes, nickels, quarters in there, right? So I keep asking you, what's my question? How much did they each pay for the ring?
They each paid 9. They came in
Where's
with
the dollar?
10 and lost and got one back.
What do you mean drop it in the stairwell? Did I take what's on
No, 'cause she
You guys are getting distracted. What happens every time I ask you a question?
I think.
No, I divert you. I divert you on where's the dollar. Okay? So the answer is right there. I'm just diverting, bait and switching you. Not that I do that in real life. That is not something you should ever do.
You only gave us $4.
Huh? So think about that. You can leave with that. But any questions on? Go ahead.
Yeah, I hope this will be useful for everybody. What's your advice to people for getting promoted? I think it's maybe the same advice like, oh, hey, I want to start at my sport, or I want to make a better grade, or I want to get a promotion at work.
Right.
Because if I'm going to create my own business, it would be helpful for me to know as much as possible.
Right,
and be
right.
able to do as much as possible.
Right, no, that's great, and it's just like you said it, if you want to get a better grade, you want to do this, what are you doing now to do that? Same thing in work life, and we talked about it a little bit today, is ask for those extra projects. Go to your boss and say, what else can I be doing? And, there's been times to where, especially in the old businesses I was at, they were newer companies, they didn't have a lot of efficiency, so there's tons of room for extra projects or getting data on, gosh, it'd be great to know if we knew how many dollars we're selling in this area and what our cost of goods sold is for that. Do we have that anywhere? No. Well, maybe we shouldn't be chasing that business and let's identify that. So that'd make you a hero. If you can come up and add to the bottom line of the business and you think of some simple idea like that, just always ask for more. It's funny because the antithesis of that, my grandfather, when I went into the Army, said, the only piece of advice I'm ever going to give you, because he was a military guy, don't ever volunteer for anything. I don't know if you've seen very many.
That gets said in the military a lot. I was never in the military. I don't know why that gets said in the military.
Yeah. Well, what they're doing is everybody wants to be a volunteer, right? So a drill sergeant comes along and says, "Hey, I need 3 volunteers." Well, you want to get away from the hell that you're in basic training. You're like, well, what are you going to do? Okay, you're gonna help cook in the kitchen, and guess what? You got to wake up at 4 a.m. for that, or you got to go out and. The drill sergeant has this dog that likes to use the field every night. Now you need to go pick up behind the dog, right? So the military, if you're in the military, don't ever volunteer for anything. But in corporate world, absolutely do it. That's going to get you ahead, okay?
In your experience, how many people do that?
Not a lot, especially starting out. Some folks are just there to, it's their first job out of college, they're getting started, and, they're getting married for whatever reason. They're just status quo. I'd say, it's funny because Mortgage and Properties, I've been so successful in this, all of my friends want to know about it. And I've told them all about it. And I've probably had over a dozen say, I want to do this, will you mentor me? And one single friend has actually done it. Okay? So that's about the part of wanting to be successful. It's the sacrifice, it's got to want it more than error, and it's the pain. It's going to be painful. If everything was easy to do to get successful, we'd all be doing it. We'd all be successful, right? But what separates the people that are successful is the folks that actually do the hard work. And but yeah, it's minimal. So that boss, you come to him and you prove yourself like that, that's going to get you promoted. And again, I tell all of my folks, when I was in a management role, especially sales folks, because I was always in sales, I said, look, if you come in, Mr. Webker, I'm going to train you. I want you to make more money than I am. That's my goal. If you're making more money than I am, I'm going to be promoted, right? I didn't care. I'm like, if you can go kill it, it's going to make me look better, so why wouldn't I make you look good? So if you come to me and say, how can I get ahead? Why am I going to deny you, right? So. Anything else?
Where's the dollar?
Where's the dollar?
Nicole, tell him, where's the dollar?
I
That's
don't
right
have my
here.
dollars in
Yeah. I can't tell you. You guys got to figure that out.
It's in my ticket.
I got to leave here today because I closed the deal, right? Yeah.
What exactly are you asking?
How much did they each pay for the room?
34.
They each paid 10. And what they get back?
They got back 5.
No.
Correct. They did get back. Well, they each paid 10, which collectively is 30, to be fair, since you're combining what they got back together. So separately, they paid 10, they got $1. Collectively, they paid 30 and got back 5.
Total.
So how much did they each pay for the room? That's the question.
$9.
Okay, so, and there's 3 of them,
Yeah.
and the $2 tip. So where's the dollar?
Who cares?
Tell her.
What's the name?
Oh, it's yours.
Did you Google?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
When she gave me back the $5, when you split that up over 3 people, it's $1.67 each, but there's no change involved. So instead of each paying $10, you guys each paid $8.34, which is
8.33 and a
minus-
third.
Yeah, and then so when you multiply that by 30, it's $25, and then add the $5 you got back.
Okay. But, so when they walked in, they had a 10 in their pocket though, right? And what do they have now?
They still have $1.
But, so if they check out tomorrow, they got $1 in their pocket, right? Okay.
So everybody wins.
Well, but,
Is that the
so they
answer?
paid 9. I mean, do we agree there?
No.
Oh, let me ask you this way. They're out $9. Is that fair?
Okay, yes.
Okay, so they're out $9, and there's 3 of them.
Yeah.
So that's 27. They gave Nicole a $2 tip. I'm just still curious where that dollar is.
Don't think they paid more than
Okay.
$9?
See, she got the answer right. I just totally distracted her again.
Wait, what?
Okay?
Yeah.
All right. See how that is?
Where's the dollar, Bryce?
Well, if there's no other questions, thank you very much.
Hey,
And, okay. How are we on time? Are we okay? Sis?
We're good.
Oh, really? Okay, I shortened that up, so I'm glad. Okay.
Mr. Oyler, from a
Yeah.
presentation point of view, is there anything that you could recommend? I'm sure you've seen good presentation skills versus very poor presentation skills. We're actually giving presentations the week after Thanksgiving. Is there any
Right.
advice you could give to these guys about something you've seen through your experience?
Yeah, I would say that's a great question. I came up through the PowerPoint era, and I know you've got a different one that you're using, and that's pretty cool. I know Matty uses it. What's the name of it?
There's Keynote and there's Prezi.
Okay, I think it's Prezi that I've seen that Matty's done. So nobody likes to sit through a PowerPoint, okay, especially, when I'm looking at 31 private equity guys coming in, and they all have PowerPoints. So don't overdo it on data. The key on a presentation is just kind of the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid, okay? So have your presentation be attractive. Have it flow and make sense, but tell a story. So if I'm coming in and trying to sell you on something, I got to tell a story from the beginning to end. Make sure that story flows in order and it hits enough of the highlights, okay? But then don't go down into the weeds a ton with all of this glamorous data that you're going to try to mesmerize them by. Just know that and be prepared so if you dive down. So for instance, if, an obvious thing for Wainwright is how much are your sales and maybe how much are your sales by state? Well, I'm not going to drill down to per customer, or I'm not going to drill down to, cost of goods sold and all of this stuff. Now, I have to know that because that's the next general question. But just my point is, don't bury the presentation or inflate it or bloat it just for the sake of doing that, because while it's going to look cool if I've got a 30-page presentation. If you come in with a 30-page presentation or a 6-page presentation to me, and that 6-pager tells a story and you know the answers to the questions I ask, I'm going to fall asleep on you on the 30-page. I'm going to be bored to death, and by the time that you get done with that presentation, I just want it to be over. So I probably could care less at that point. And if it's the same business on the 6-pager, and I'm done, and it looks good, and it told the story, and you know the answers, I do that all day long. So that's what probably my advice would be. And then, do something different. Don't do the same standard backgrounds, and try to set yourself apart. But on the flip side of that, you can get in trouble trying to be too different. Okay? Don't be too different either. I mean, just know your audience. If you're going in for marketing, maybe you need to be really different and stand out and do a Shazam type of shocking why you're different, because, wow, this is what we need. But if that's not your audience, don't try to wow in that way. Wow them with how it told a story and got down and answered their questions. Is that helpful? Cool. All right, you still trying to figure it out? All right, guys. Well, thank you again.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Aaron's right.
It's gonna confuse me again if I
Why'd you
say it,
look?
yeah.